I have been playing a little-known game by the name of Astro Bot on
Wow.
PlayStation 5.
A game that was announced with the gameplay reveal of Concord and came out after the
Week
game.
after
The game
Concord.
came out, it came and went by the time Astrobot even released. But here we are.
Yeah.
Nick, tell me about Astrobot. This is one that obviously a busy release schedule here, and so while I pivoted toward the not family friendly, you went with Astrobot. So how is this first party PlayStation title living up to the hype?
It lives up to the hype. This is one fun ass game, Sri. I platinumed the game. I just finished it today.
So you're telling me this is a review after 100%. I can put that in the title now.
Yes, you can. It's just so much fun. Basically, it's if I'm giving you the highest level of the most basic of point of entrance into this review, it basically does everything really, really great, and I have two nitpicks about it. So
okay. Well, okay. So to set the stage, so Astrobot had a VR game initially, Astrobot Rescue Mission, and then I think most famously it had the game that was prepackaged with the PS5. To this day, one of the best kind of all around just I don't even want to say tech demos, but like one of the best first party PlayStation games out there, because it's just like a short but solid platformer that is kind of delves into the PS5. So in that way, it is a little bit of like a showcase of the hardware, but also it has so much of the PlayStation legacy and everything like that in it. But now, Team Asobi, right? I think that's the developer. Yep. They're getting their shot at making a full Astrobot game, putting him at the front, I don't know if Astrobot's a he or a she. I don't want to assume, but
not specified.
Yeah,
so.
they're putting it at the front of the package, and there we are. Now we can talk about what you loved and the two nitpicks.
Yeah, basically this game, I'll open it up by saying it's the closest I think Sony has ever come to just like making their own Nintendo game, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah,
Nintendo sort of has this, this not all the time, but for like a mainline Mario game or like a Kirby or Zelda, they kind of have like, a quality bar that they try to meet, and it's usually very high, at least amongst like critics and stuff like that. It's usually, very technically solid, visually interesting. The gameplay mechanics are interesting, and all of that applies to Astrobot. If you've played Astro's Playroom, which is the PS5 pack-in title, it's very similar in kind of structure to that game. You are, collecting famous, PlayStation-themed robots. You're, playing with different like suit modifications, more or less. I don't know exactly how to describe that, but like you get this gear that's like usually themed around an animal, and it gives you like a special ability, and usually the levels will be designed around that mechanic, or remixing that mechanic in a new way. And that's probably what I like the most about the game. It's longer than the pack-in game. To platinum the game, it took me like 14 hours, which is like the perfect length, at least for me when I'm playing like a platforming game like this. They had just the right amount of like new gameplay ideas to where nothing ever got like significantly reused, or like if they were reusing something, again, they had like some other element to it that made it feel fresh still.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just, if you're not going for the platinum, like it's probably somewhere in the like 10-ish hour range, I'd say.
Astro has to be announced as Sony's mascot at this point. I mean, that's fair. He's got that consistency down, I'll say.
It certainly has the history too. I mean, like if they wanted something that encompasses like all eras of PlayStation, Astrobot's, you know, doing a pretty good job at being that kind of representation at this
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you also have to
but
think
yeah,
that there's not like a really, unless I'm missing something, like currently in the PS5 generation, a family friendly like kind of mascot, I should say, for
outside
the
of
PlayStation.
Sackboy, but Sackboy's
Right.
kind of falling
Exactly.
to the wayside almost. Like I feel
Yeah.
like after that first like launch game for PS5, like we're kind of on Astrobot now.
Yep.
Astrobot kind of stole Sackboy's lunch. Um, but yeah, basically, the game opens up almost like a direct follow up to the Astro's Playroom,
Oh,
where
really?
Astro and all the robots are inside the PS5 spaceship.
Uh,
They're cruising through space, and this giant alien appears out of nowhere and basically rips the PS5 apart and takes all the components out. And then the all the robots start scattering across the galaxy, and the ship crash lands on a planet. And basically, from that point on, you find like a little this planet that it crashed on acts as kind of like a hub world that you get to. You'll be returning to it multiple times throughout the game to do various things. But you find the satellite, and that's what unlocks the first galaxy that you get to go to.
Gotcha.
And something that is new with this game that the Astro's Playroom didn't have is that you get to fly around on a dual sense little like spaceship thing.
Right.
Basically,
Yeah.
like Astro just kind of hangs on to it. And what's fun about that is like each level, so like you have multiple galaxies, and then in the galaxies you have multiple levels.
Mhm.
Each level you go into, you get to do this little like fly-in sequence on the ship. Some of them are short where it's just like you see the planet and you land. Some of them they hide collectibles and like you have to like dodge the ship through various things, or there might be like some enemies like swinging past, stuff like that. So they do a lot of fun stuff
Now,
with that.
the part of kind of what I was saying earlier, Astrobot
Mhm.
is kind of like a tech demo. Does it kind of break out of that mold? Is it more than just that? Because and also as a follow up to that, like is it still showcasing all of those like like the finer details with like the the adaptive triggers and the was it haptic feedback or whatever the Sony's terms are, which we'll get to
Yeah.
later this episode.
Yeah, it still has all of those hallmarks that you would expect from Astro's Playroom. The haptics are like incredible. The triggers, they, have a lot of different abilities that play with those triggers. Um, when you're controlling the ship, it's using the gyro in the controller. So like they really it's a showpiece for not only the visuals but also those sort of like features that the PlayStation 5 has that a lot of the other AAA kind of studios don't
Right.
really use that much. You might get, some soft like haptics or like the triggers usually the developers will use, but yeah, they're absolutely sweating every single little thing that your controller can do. But to answer like your question more
Yeah.
directly, I would say it does move beyond just being like a simple tech demo. Like
Okay.
these mechanics definitely are a lot more thought out and they're a lot more interesting. I do feel like with Astro's Playroom, because it was so new, it does get kind of like lumped in with that tech demo kind of feel.
Yeah.
But these actually like, you'll get a new power up. We'll use an example. There's these a power up where you get these boxing gloves. I think they're like frogs or something like that. And they have like springs on them. So you do a bunch of punching and stuff. And where in Astro's Playroom, that might be like the only thing you do with those, they find other ways to give that same power up new abilities throughout the game. So while you could use it to punch enemies, you can also use it to grab certain items and throw them. You can also use it to stick to a structure and fling Astro Bot like a catapult, basically. So they constantly find new ways to kind of give these mechanics depth to where like I do feel like it moves past just being like a simple tech demo and they're actually like interesting and involved game mechanics. I'm just trying to figure out where I should really tackle it because I really just loved all aspects of the game.
Well, what are your two gripes then? I'm curious about what had you down versus like
they really are
you
just nitpicks.
Okay,
I want
sure.
to stress that these aren't things that are drastically going to affect your enjoyment of the game. Let me pull them up because I did write them down. So I mentioned with the ship and other things that it uses the gyro motion of the PS5 controller. I feel like in any game in history, it's never as tight as you want it to be, right? I think it's really close. For the most part, the gyro, like occasionally you have to like aim certain things, or like if you're moving the ship around, sometimes there's parts like, I don't want to spoil a whole lot, but like
Sure.
you have like hands more or less, and you are manipulating an object, and all of those use the gyro controls. And like very infrequently would it be like, oh, I missed a shot that I was trying to aim because the cursor wasn't feeling like it was where my controller was in space, right? That's a really minor one. The one that did start to frustrate me a little bit is that some enemies that have projectile attacks, sometimes their aim is really good. And like it can kind of, when you're playing, let's say like a little bit of a harder level and you keep dying on the same thing, even though you're trying to get around it, but it's just because these enemies have laser accuracy.
It would get
it would get a little frustrating, but again, like it's like frustrating for like a second, and then you respawn, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just do it again. So
yeah,
those were really my only two.
That's not bad. Those aren't too big. Funny enough, says Chad, the last game that used the DualSense features fully was years ago. Was Astro's Playroom. I mean, that's fair. I remember very distinctly, like when I first got my PS5. Obviously, there's like many people, that was one of the first games I booted up. And I remember distinctly that like as you're walking on metal, it like goes a ding, 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 and then like you can feel like the little almost like they're like pressing the metal feet against your controller. So it's like, that haptic feedback was.
There is an extremely satisfying haptic feeling in this game, where there's a bonus level where you jump on top of an armadillo and you like kind of roll around on it like while you're moving, and you jump it into these platforms that are made of spikes, and it's the most satisfying feeling that you're describing with the sound design it's just like ding, 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 as you're like rolling over it with this metal ball. It's so satisfying. And that's a big part of the game too, is the animations, the sound design, the music, like all of it, the haptics, all of it kind of come together, and it just feels like so satisfying for like a platformer, right? It's a very Nintendo-like quality that they've kind of really distilled into this game, but it doesn't just feel like they're
a Mario Odyssey clone or something. Sure, yeah.
Exactly. It still has its own identity. Part of that is, bolstered with like the PlayStation history angle, but a lot of it is also just like new, interesting kind of iconography for Astrobot. The theming of the levels is like super creative. There's a bunch of levels that are like, spooky themed, and like, it looks like something that might be out of like a Bloodborne or something like that, with like gothic castles. There's these desert levels, there's snow levels, there's a really interesting level with a mechanic that like you fly into this planet, right? And it looks kind of like, a little bit basic when you fly in. It's like white metal in like, a sunny sky, right? There's these potted flowers everywhere. And right off the bat, you get the upgrade for this level, or the ability, which is like a little mouse, and then a cage pops up around Astro, trapping you inside. And the power that you get is it shrinks you down to like a really tiny size, and the entire level then changes, because stuff that just kind of looked like it was background elements are actually stuff that you can shrink down and platform on to get further into the level. There's a really cool level that I played earlier today where it has a day-night mechanic, and you hit these switches to change the time of day, and it physically rotates the level depending on
Oh,
what state it's in.
sure.
So even just like in like setting and theme, there's a lot of really interesting stuff that they go with, and it's it doesn't reuse too many like environments, which I found surprising. Like there are like some elements where there's like, maybe 2 or 3 desert levels, 2 or 3 snow levels, but they all visually look different. It doesn't look like they're just like, copying and
Sure, right.
pasting assets around.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
like there was a considerable amount of effort going in to make each of these levels feel distinct,
Hmm.
which I thought was really impressive.
I mean, it's the thing that you were saying earlier that Nintendo has this formula. There's like a code that they have that it seems like no one can crack, and I'm
Hmm.
glad that Team Asobi has done it. I feel like it's like a long time coming for considering like how long Mario and these characters have been around, and Nintendo's been kind of consistently getting hits with them. I don't know if
Hmm.
it's like the reservation comes from, or the fact not the reservation, but the fact that it hasn't happened yet, to a degree like this, is because they couldn't
Hmm.
find the right mascot. Because I feel like that's the thing. It has to be, uh, you know, a recognizable figure that you're gonna have to bring back, and that's what they've done here. And so maybe that's what they were waiting for. I don't know if like Xbox was trying to cook something over there too, and they're like, well, how do we get a mascot? The Master Chef.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how they cook plots over there, but it's cool to see someone do it. Now I wish more people do, because this is like 30 platformers are all, like, common. Like you see them all the time, especially in the indie space, but to this degree, there's like a quality of,
Triple A,
yeah,
yeah, triple A
it's
like
not common.
platformers. It's kind of gone to the wayside outside of Nintendo. Like,
Yes, yeah, exactly. But sorry,
Sri, I do have one more kind of component that I feel like I should
oh,
bring up
okay,
to you that you will find the most interesting.
okay,
Um, Again, I don't want to go into too heavy
sure,
spoilers because like this game it's amazing. Like,
yeah,
believe the hype, go play it if you are at all interested in 3D platformers or just want something really fun to play. If certain games like maybe kind of have you down for whatever reason,
right,
definitely give Astrobot a try.
hmm,
That said, oh, I didn't even talk about the boss fights. The boss fights are awesome.
okay.
Also, there's, multi-stage. It's very high energy. That's all I'll say on that real quick. But
Any ones
the,
that got
the
you stumped?
mm, not for more than like 1 or 2 attempts. Like
Sure.
it's not like that. That's something I should also mention. The game has a very nice like casual difficulty. There are some bonus levels that are harder, and you will die multiple times on those ones.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You, for the most part, it's just kind of like casual, easygoing platforming. That's you can't turn your brain off to. So
Sure.
like, don't get
Right.
that wrong.
Right.
But you know, a nice level of challenge, and then on top of that, harder levels if you're going for 100% and everything. But the reason that I had to bring up boss fights is you get a very unique kind of reward for completing the boss fight levels. And that is you get, I believe the game calls them hero worlds. And what this is it's an entire level designed around a specific PlayStation franchise
Oh.
rather than just being like, you find the random robot in,
Right.
the safari level or the desert level. These are like levels that you will get game mechanics from these franchises applied to Astrobot. The
Dang.
entire level is themed after that franchise, and all the robots you find are characters from those games.
That's pretty
Um,
awesome.
and yeah, it's really cool. I do think some of them are better than others,
Sure.
but all of them do have like unique aspects to them, and they really kind of adapt these games into Astrobot style in a really fun way.
Hmm.
Um, I'll give 2 examples. I'll
Okay.
give the earliest two. The first one you do is themed entirely around Ape Escape, which is
Whoa.
not
Okay.
It's not a franchise that I'm super familiar with. Like, I know the basic idea of the game.
I was not expecting Ape Escape.
But yeah, you basically, it opens up, you get the net from the main character of Ape Escape, and it makes Astrobot look like the main character. And then the robots that you're collecting in the level are all the monkeys. So you go around and you get to swing the net, and like you have to chase them around and capture them all. And then the second level is based on God of War, Ragnarok. And you get the Leviathan axe, you get to throw it and call it back. It gets to freeze enemies. They have like puzzles throughout the level where you're freezing platforms and stuff. So again, I don't want to spoil too much on that front because it's definitely a really awesome reward you get. And it's kind of like the bow tie at the end of a galaxy. Because basically, once you finish that, you get the part for your ship back, and you get to unlock like the next galaxy to go to. So
now you've beaten the game. Obviously, like we said, this is Nick's review after 100%. So at the very least, you're saying play it. But is this something that an easy platinum? Is it? I mean, you did it in a few days, but just in general.
You get most of the way there just by playing the game, and like if you're going through and finding all the robots, which you want to do because it's just fun to play and fun to find these robots. You're fully exploring. Like if you are fully exploring each level, you will pretty much be finding everything that the level has to offer. The one thing that you might get tripped up on are secret exits, which are also a thing in other platformers where usually there'll be a hidden part of a level, and when you find the secret exit in this game, it will take you out of the level, but it'll also unlock a new level in a like secret galaxy, basically. Some of those secret exits are like, they cause me to pause and be like, man, where is this? Because they sometimes have you do like things you wouldn't expect to unlock them.
Right.
Again, it's nothing that it's like too crazy or anything. But yeah, to answer your question, most of it, like I think by the time I was like starting to go like do my cleanup stuff, like I was already at like 80% trophy completion. So the rest is just like doing like, miscellaneous tasks here. Some levels have like a unique thing in them that will give you a trophy. Like there's one where, there's a basketball hoop, and if you kick a basketball and get it in the hoop, it's a trophy. So there's stuff like that are sprinkled in a couple of the levels, but it's by and large, it's a pretty easy platinum.